The headliners, the newsmakers, the political scene, and government issues. These should be our concern. And we're taking you at the forefront. Good morning. Today is August 1. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. Join me at the forefront as we zero in and discuss the details of some of the most pressing national issues that our country faces. Former Presidential Spokesperson Atty. Roque has been a prized figure in recent news headlines, from being vocal about his opposition and even calling for the resignation of President Bongbong Marcos, to having his name caught up in recent high-profile POGO raids by the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission. Just the other day, he had his hands and mouth full, handling the questioning of Senator Risa Hontiveros and Senator William Gatchalian on yet another Senate inquiry on POGOs, this time involving the arrest of allegedly 2 POGO bosses in a house in Tuba, Benguet, supposedly owned by Atty. Roque. We start the first day of the month with a bang, as we'll have with us live the man of the hour himself at the forefront. The most controversial, if not the most sought-after personality in today's news, former Presidential Spokesperson Atty. Roque. Attorney Harry, welcome to At the Forefront.
Well, good morning, Karen, and thank you very much for having me here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, Attorney Harry. So recently, your name has been involved in 2 POGO raids. Can you tell us why, well, first, why were you even called to be involved in the Pampanga POGO raid?
Well, let me emphasize that there was only 1 POGO raid where I was involved, because the other was not a raid. They apprehended an undocumented alien in a residential house. It was not a POGO facility. No? Now, I was implicated in the POGO raid in Pampanga because I handled a series of cases involving ejectment, no? Involving the owner of the facilities that is acting as the lessor to the licensee, no? To the POGO licensee, known as Lucky South 99. No? But my client has always been Whirlwind Corporation. No? And I think documents will show that they leased the land and they built 49 buildings and in turn leased it to Lucky South. Now, what happened was I was recruited to handle the case sometime in, if I'm not mistaken, in August. And we had a substantial victory in handling it. I came in at a time when there was already a writ of execution asking them to vacate the premises and to pay hundreds of millions of pesos, literally. Remember, Attorney Karen, this is an ejectment case. And it makes you wonder how a court, an ejectment court, can award hundreds of millions of pesos. No? So already you know that that's already a flag decision, no? Because it's beyond the jurisdiction of an ejectment court. So we won that case. Now, it so happened that a former staff member started schooling in an aviation school in Clark. So when I found out that he was there after one hearing or meeting, I can't recall what it was, no? But it was sometime in, if I'm not mistaken, October. After our meeting, I called for my staff. We had, we had lunch. And after I had left, the client, Cassie Ong, asked, what are you doing here in Pampanga? He says, I'm enrolling in a flying school. He's from Bohol. And he inquired if she knew of a place where he can stay. And it was then that the client offered him housing. And I think it's because of also appreciation for the fact that when I came in, they thought the fight had already been lost. No? And until now, they haven't been ejected. No? And we're now contemplating maybe we should leave the premises and leave all the problems to the landowner, because after all, the issue is over the property itself. No? So anyway, that's how it started. An ex-staff member lived in the premises, but he said that he lived in the accommodation portion of the complex because it's 10 hectares. And of course, in the area where he lived, it's all accommodations. No? And that any business conducted in that place was in a separate complex. No? And I think a physical examination will confirm this. So when there was a raid, his personal items were found, including documents that he had, among others, his appointment paper when he was appointed to Malacanang the first time around. And there was also travel documents, no? Because I was invited to Ukraine having represented victims of war crimes in Ukraine, and there's an all-out war ongoing then. At the time, two individuals promised to go with me, Filipinos from Austria, because the entry point to Ukraine is Poland, adjacent to Austria. No? But last-minute changes occurred, and they couldn't come with me. And I said I will not go to Ukraine alone. No? I even sent a letter to the Philippine ambassador to Poland for assistance, borrowing a car. I got no response. No? So last minute, knowing that he was not doing anything anyway, I said, accompany me to Ukraine. And of course, there was also some difficulty convincing there because who wants to go to a war zone? No? Only I, apparently. So that's how the documents found their way in the accommodations of my staff member, no? Including an affidavit of support, which was required by the Polish embassy. But the Ukrainian visa was no problem, no? Because, of course, I was a guest of the Ukrainian government.
So basically, we're talking about a facility that has housing accommodations. And the person that was living there had nothing to do with POGOs.
Nothing at all, no? And that's why I'm very sad that because of this incident, you know that there was a well-concerted effort, no, to besmirch my name, no? Because all sorts of tales came out because of this incident, no? When it was simply, there were things left there by someone residing in an accommodation portion of what appears to be a POGO facility. But even the investigators will confirm it was actually separate, no, from where the business was being conducted. And from what was told to me by my staff member, it was hardly occupied too.
The
whole complex. No?
So
the
basically you
entire
have
facility.
10 hectares.
10 hectares.
Part of it had
one
apparently
side
had POGO operations,
yes, one
and
side.
then the other side had
Purely
accommodations. And
where
so
he was
happened
staying.
that the accommodation side, there was a person that used to stay there, and some of your documents ended up in that accommodations because you were trying to arrange, for example, like that trip to Ukraine. And
Yes.
then that's how your name got
That's how my name
involved
got
in
out.
all of this.
Yes. But, of course, he was able to stay there because the owner of the facility, not the POGO operator, was my client. And there's a contract of lease, you know, indicating that my client, Whirlwind, leased the premises to Lucky South. And in turn, you know, Whirlwind was also leasing from the family that owns the land.
Okay. So
That's why,
it is a bit
that's why
complicated.
the ejectment case came out because
Yes.
there was a bit of a confusion who really was the owner. There's a signed lease contract between my client and the lease owner. It turns out that the father who signed the lease contract was not the registered owner, it was his children. But, you know, the father thought he could lease it out because he just put it in the name of his children anyway. The children had no visible means of support, and everyone knew that the property really is the father's.
Okay, so that's why there was an ejectment case, because there was
Yes.
also internal fighting among
Yes.
the owners, the
Yes.
one who really owns it, the father, and then the titled children. What about the Tuba Benguet? Is that also related to a POGO business?
Well, that's the proof that there's really a demolition job on me, because I have talked to the Chinese embassy people, and they have confirmed to me that the person found to be residing in that house is wanted in China for financial fraud. They have no information that he is involved in POGO. And I have also contacted my, there's a lessee, okay? There's a lease contract. It's owned by a corporation, albeit controlled by the family, no? But
Which the
the
Tuba
house,
Benguet is not your personal property.
it's not registered in my name. In fact, in the corporation that owns it, I only have a nominal shareholding. But I have to be forthright. Now, even before this incident happened, we're in the process of reorganizing, and we have actually prepared documents, no, whereby a company that I control will end up owning 100% of the house. No? But right now, I only appear as a nominal shareholder. No? Now, but in any case, the attempt to besmirch me was to link that person allegedly to POGO. Absolutely false. And yesterday in the House, I'm happy that Undersecretary Gilbert Cruz confirmed, well, they will investigate, but there's no information that he is linked. But if you read newspaper accounts, they're linked to POGO. In other words, the demolition job really wants me linked to POGO. No? And my question is, if I'm linked to POGO as a lawyer, why will I not admit it? It's not a crime for a lawyer to lawyer for any corporation, especially if that POGO operator was licensed anyway. No? So it was a legal POGO. It was not an illegal POGO. No? But as you know, you cannot claim attorney-client relations if you don't have a relationship with the client. They say that, you know, when I met PAGCOR chairman bringing along this Cassie Ong, who I knew was from Whirlwind, the lessor, and they have a common interest for Lucky South to continue its business, because otherwise, you know, the whole facility was built for a POGO. Yeah, and it was built for a POGO. So, you know, that's the end of the line for the business, no? What we discussed in that meeting was not at all about any license. It was about a rescheduling of payment because the client complained that their representative at that time to PAGCOR absconded with the money intended to pay PAGCOR. So that was it. And yet, if you read the official release of PAGCOR prior to the appearance of Chairman Tenco in the Senate, ex-cabinet member interceded for a license on behalf of an illegal POGO. The only correct statement there is an ex-cabinet member. Did I lobby for a license? No. Chairman Tenco was very clear about that. Was it an illegal POGO? No, because Chairman Tenco also said at that time it was a licensed POGO. Where is this coming from? And you cannot blame me, therefore, for concluding that the smear campaign is because I've become a very strong critic of this administration.
Well, on that note, you were also asked to be a resource person in the Senate investigation last Monday. And initially, you said you couldn't attend because you had prior work commitments, you had hearings, yes, you have court hearings, but at least you managed to attend. What changed at that time?
The judge was on leave.
Okay, so they got lucky, okay.
This judge is so industrious. In 2 instances, we had hearings until 7 in the evening. I'm not kidding. She's one of a kind. She's great. But when I had the direct examination for this witness, it was from 9:30 to 12:30. And I'm up against 3 defense counsels because I always, you know, prosecute cases as a private prosecutor. No? So I was thinking, well, I don't think it will go beyond lunchtime. So I said initially, I will follow, no? But the invitation was to appear at 10 a.m. But by way of hindsight, dahil makukulit yung mga kalabang ko mga defense lawyers, I thought, well, baka hindi nga matapos. Because I'm telling you, twice we had hearings until 7 p.m. No? So sabi ko, baka hindi na lang. I was also anticipating na baka pagod na ako, no, after hours and hours of trial. But fortunately, when I got to City Hall, the judge was on leave. So I rushed to the Senate just in time to hear Senator Hontiveros saying that nagtatago. I do not know who she was alluding to, but yun lang naabutan ko, nagtatago. So mabuti na lang, right after that, hello, I'm here. And there was such a big issue. Eh sinabi ko naman, meron akong hearing. On leave yung judge, eh takbo ko sa Senado. Pero of course, I have to give priority to my livelihood, no?
Yes,
Kesa
because you're a practicing
pagiging
lawyer.
resource person, no?
Yes.
And also, I am an agent of the court. So natural, in case of a conflict, I will choose the courts over the Senate, no?
And you have a duty to your client as
And
well,
I have a duty to the
appear
client.
for
No?
hearings.
So it was not an attempt to evade it, no? As soon as I found out that the judge was on leave. In fact, na-late nga ako dun sa trial na yun. Nagpapatawag pa ako na malilate ako kasi I was preparing documents to submit to the Senate in case I'm able to follow the Senate, no? So na-late ako. The call was for 9:30. Nakarating na ako dun sa vicinity ng City Hall, 10:20 na, 10:15. And then tinawagan ko yung defense counsel at sabi niya, uy, wala si judge. Sabi ko, mabuti, diretso tayo sa Senate.
Despite the traffic, umabot po kayo.
Malapit lang naman kasi Manila RTC sa Senate.
Yes.
So,
So,
lang.
when you attended the Senate hearing, you had a word war with Senator Risa Hontiveros and almost got cited in contempt. What was going through your mind when you were hearing that you were being warned that you were going to be cited in contempt?
I knew that Senate hearings were completely alien to the kind of hearing that lawyers are accustomed to in a court of law. My problem with Senator Risa Hontiveros was she wanted me to answer with a yes or no. But as lawyers, we know that in cross-examination, you can do that. But you also give the same witness an opportunity to explain on redirect. She did not want me to explain my answer. And that's why I complained. Why is it that you invite me as a resource person and you don't allow me to talk? Because she was insisting yes or no. And that's when I really noticed, no, that although the rules of court are supposed to be suppletorily applicable in a supplementary manner in the Senate,
Yes.
unless you have training in the law of evidence, you would not know the significance of that. So the whole thing was, I cannot go beyond yes or no, and I have no opportunity to explain. That's not right. That's really a violation of due process as well, no? Because in the rules of court, we know that there is an opportunity to explain, and I was not being given an opportunity to explain, no? And that's why I felt that I had to assert myself, no? I was being very respectful. Yes, she was talking, but she also kept on butting in when I was answering. So I felt she could interrupt me, but I could not interrupt her. But in the end, I apologized, if only because I was trained to be brought up to be a gentleman, no? And maybe I should have been more cool, no? But you know, you're being accused of being a POGO coddler, and that was what she was in fact saying. Of course, she resented the word insinuation, and she said, I would prefer that you say you're wrong, but I thought it was more respectful to say insinuation. I mean, and I think we both know what insinuation means, no? It's less harsh than saying that's false, no?
Or that you're...
Because I did not want to say that in her own committee hearing, no? But it's really completely different when you apply the rules of evidence as lawyers and when you appear in the Senate as a resource person before individuals who are not lawyers. Of course, it's not a requirement for a senator to be a lawyer, but when the rules of evidence are suppletorily applicable, they should still apply it.
Yes, and in your head, you were trying to see like the application of those rules and like it.
Yes, in fact, her only basis for saying I was lawyering for Lucky South was a document. It was an organizational chart which says Harry Roque legal. Now, to her, that was conclusive evidence. But you and I as lawyers know that under Rule 120 of the Rules of Court, that's only evidence of the existence of the paper. But if you want to prove the truth of matters contained in that document, you need to present evidence, either a person who saw the document being prepared or the person who signed the document. There was no such evidence, and yet she was pushing that that's sufficient evidence to prove I was lawyering for Lucky South. And that's when I said, Your Honor, under the rules of the Senate, the rules of court are suppletorily applicable. And I was citing Rule 120. And that's what she said, don't teach us about the rules of the Senate. But you see, I was not teaching her about the rules of the Senate. I was pointing out that the rules of evidence says that that's nothing but a piece of paper. And you and I as lawyers know that.
Yes.
So
And this
no
piece
big
of
deal.
paper was a letter or?
It was nothing. It was a piece of paper, you know, an organizational chart, which apparently was submitted to PAGCOR. But I said I had no participation in the preparation of that document. I did not authorize my name. And then she was saying, why did you not sue Casiong? In the first place, there's no evidence that Casiong prepared that document.
Yeah.
Number two, I only found out about it in the last Senate hearing. Although I was not present, I saw it on TV. So it's like, why will I sue someone with no evidence that she prepared it?
Yeah. So as far as you were concerned, this document that was being presented had not been authenticated. Like there was no...
It has not been. It's not, as far as I'm concerned, it's a fact. And that's why, you know, she felt, don't lecture me on the rules of the Senate, but that's not the rules of the Senate, that's the rules of evidence. And I think I'm in a better position to explain what the rules of evidence are.
You were once quoted as saying that POGOs are a cash resource for the government. Do you still share that view?
Well, I said that when I was presidential spokesperson. It's true, it brought in some funds. And you see, I've had to really study how this POGO operates because during the time of quarantine, we had to justify the opening of POGOs as BPOs at a time when churches were closed. It was a tough job as a spokesperson. And that's why I know a little about the functioning, but you know, I'm learning that I only know the tip of the iceberg because as a spokesperson, I really did not have to fully understand how it was, just to have an idea, no? But of course, since it was the policy of government to try to, number one, regulate what could have been, what really started as being illegal, it was already there, and to earn money, especially at the time of a pandemic, I had to defend it, the opening of of POGOs as BPOs as a presidential spokesperson. But yesterday in the House, I was asked by Bishop Congressman Abante if I believe in POGOs. And I said, no. Personally, as a Christian, I'm against all forms of gambling. I have never gambled. And I don't even know how to play any card games. That's how I was raised as a Christian. No? And so my personal view is I'm not in favor of any and all forms of gambling, especially POGO, because it has been complained about by the government of People's Republic of China.
And right now, we have the statement of the president to ban all types of POGOs. Do you think this is a political move?
It's clearly a political move, but there's nothing reduced into writing as of yet.
You mean like in terms of real policy
There's
and
no
regulations?
executive order, there's no presidential issuance, and it's similar to his verbal comment that he will not cooperate with the ICC, and yet just the other day, the Solgen was saying, we will allow the investigators to come in, but will not help them. So that's the problem when you don't put it down in writing. You could renege on your word.
Is it necessary?
As Miriam Defensor Santiago once said, I lied, ha, 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 if it's just in writing, you see? So it has to be in writing, otherwise what is your legal basis? And that's why I think Congress has to proceed with legislation, because they cannot rely on the verbal promise of the president. They need to come up with a law, and I fully support Senator Sherwin Gatchalian's Senate bill, no? Banning all forms of electronic gambling, even if it is intended for overseas.
Is it necessary to have something in writing when you have the PAGCOR already saying that they will start winding down POGO operations?
You see, that's a verbal commitment too. There's also nothing in writing from PAGCOR. So what will PAGCOR invoke? Refer to the State of the Nation address of the President? You and I as lawyers know that you cannot just refer to a State of the Nation address. There has to be a presidential issuance. Where is that presidential issuance? Which makes me conclude that it was just a political statement intended for a political audience. And unless something in writing is signed by the President, I will reserve judgment on whether or not he was serious in banning POGOs. Already we talk about some POGOs pushing for exemptions. No? And my question is, swerte naman itong mga magkakakuha ng exemption nito. Anong dahilan dyan? In a highly regulated field, syempre, may mga favorites. Bakit sila naging favorites? Eh, lahat sila illegal sa China, no? So, lahat sila technically illegal. Kaya nga, as a matter of principle, I will not represent POGOs because I have close ties also with the People's Republic of China, and I know they've been complaining that these people are criminal as far as their domestic laws are concerned.
There are others who say that POGO soared because of the support from politicians in prior administrations. What can you say about this? But before you answer that question, Attorney Harry, let's pause for a break. At the Forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the Forefront. Before we left for a commercial break, we were asking you, Attorney Harry, there are others who say that POGOs have soared because of the support of politicians in prior administrations. What can you say about this?
Well, according to former chairperson of PAGCOR, Andrea Domingo, it started in 2007, way back in 2007, when POGOs were allowed to operate by CESA, even outside of its territorial jurisdiction. This was, of course, disputed yesterday in the House by Katrina Ponce Enrile, so I do not know what to think. But I think there are issuances which prove that this electronic form of gambling really started in 2007. Now, it has since proliferated, and during the time of Duterte, there was a decision made, no? Because anyway they're operating, we might as well regulate them and earn revenues from them. And that is why just for administrative fees alone, they charge 150,000 a month, no? And that's when they started issuing out POGO licenses, no? But as a business itself, it has been there since 2007. And that's why I was a bit surprised that Senator Hontiveros says that her investigation has been ongoing for 4 years, which makes me wonder, why has it been going for 4 years? I mean, to me, that's not efficient, no? They must have some kind of a resolution by now, no? After 4 years, no? But the reality is, the issue of POGO now is being used to demonize former President Duterte. And that's why I think the focus is on me, because I was his spokesperson. No? But the records will indicate that it started even before the administration of President Duterte. He regulated it, he earned revenues from it, although Chairman Domingo was very particular that POGO was only responsible more or less for 10% of the earnings of PAGCOR, and that bulk of it still came from casino operations.
And there are other countries that have POGO operations as well, like Vietnam, I think Dubai as well. And in other countries, these operations are also licensed or considered legal.
Well, I heard another Pañero, Attorney Glenn Chong, say that the reason why we had to regulate POGO was, at that time, there were only about 7 countries in the world generating revenues from offshore gambling. And apparently, the earnings of these governments combined amounted to $33 billion. So we wanted a share of the pie. That's why we decided to regulate it, because in any case, it was ongoing already, whether we liked it or not. So that's the story why it had to be regulated, because you cannot stop it. And that is also my question now. Given the fact that it had to be regulated because it was ongoing anyway, now with the decision to ban, can it really be enforced?
Well, given the government's shift to ban all types of POGOs, do you think this is related to foreign policy as well, where some people have said that the country has shifted its stance, veering away from China and leaning more towards the United States?
I don't think so, because the People's Republic of China has consistently lobbied the Philippine government to ban POGOs. And as a former cabinet official, I can confirm and verify that they have been begging the Philippine government to ban POGOs.
Because it's an outflow of money from China, and in fact, banning POGOs would benefit China.
Of course, because it's destroying their society. It's gambling, electronic gambling that takes place in China. And it is also catalyst for computer-related crimes.
Okay, very interesting. Let's go to more about you, Attorney Harry. So you were part of the Uni Team Senate slate back in 2022. Has anything changed since then?
Of course it has changed. There's no more
I'm being subtle, okay. But okay, so...
There's no more Uni Team to begin with.
We see there's no more Uni Team. But when it comes to your position, how does that affect your position?
Well, you see, I had to put my faith 100% on VP Sara, whom I recognize as my political leader. I was just so tired of having to make political decisions for myself. And I figured I need to trust Inday Sara in her decision to support Bongbong. Why? Because I have consistently been anti-Marcos. I come from an anti-Marcos family. Jovito Salonga is my grand-uncle. And that's why the entire family was saying, what on earth are you doing with the Marcos slate? And I said, well, don't attribute the sins of the father to the son. And I really believe that. Plus, I was really unnerved by the fact that President Marcos was really a nice guy. I mean, unbelievable, So I said, he cannot be evil.
This is during the 2022 national
During the campaign. I was really unnerved by the fact that he was really a nice guy. But in any case, problem started when, number one, there was charter change. There was supposedly People's Initiative that we knew was a politician's initiative. And there was the decision to cut the budget of the Vice President after it had already been approved by the plenary in the House. And this arose when PGMA was removed as senior speaker, deputy speaker, and there was the utterance of the Vice President of the word tambaluslos, referring to someone. So all hell broke loose after that, because shortly thereafter, Justice Secretary Remulla said, we are now reassessing the possibility of returning to the ICC, and he in fact said that they will cooperate with the ICC despite the previous verbal, see, this is why I don't trust the verbal statements of the President, that he will not cooperate with the ICC, which has been reiterated incidentally now by Solgen by saying that they will allow ICC investigators in, whereas before the President really said, for them to investigate would be a violation of sovereignty. So you see that there's really been a 360-degree turn. So I think in the last part of 2023, the cracks became apparent and all hell broke loose in January when we had Maisog Davao with the President, the former President Duterte, referring for the first time to Marcos Jr. as being a drug addict. Okay?
So-
So I think officially unit team ended in January in Maisog, Davao, but the cracks appeared, and they appeared irreparable already in the last quarter of 2023.
So very early on.
Very early on.
There are others who would say that before the unit team officially broke apart, you were already criticizing the government. And the question is this because you were not given a cabinet position as early as 2022?
Well, I couldn't have been given because I have a one-year ban.
That's true, okay.
So I was not expecting. But I would have wanted, okay? But by the time the ban expired, he was already singing a different tune, particularly on the ICC. The fact that, yes, he would say he will not cooperate, but already we were saying, put it down in writing. Because the police would need a written order not to cooperate. Until now, there's nothing in writing. And of course, now you have a completely different statement from the Solicitor General. You know, within the Duterte camp, Solgen was part of us.
Yes, I was going to ask
in the
about that.
beginning, I even had conflict with my fellow former cabinet members because they kept on saying, no, for as long as Solgen Maynard is there, it will never happen. But look at the pronouncement now of Solgen. From Boying Rimulya said, if they come in, then we will arrest them. Now, they can come in, they can investigate, we will not stop them, but we will not help them, which is completely different from if they come in, we will arrest them, because that's really a function reserved only to Philippine investigators, correct? Considering the nature of sovereignty and jurisdiction, which is exclusive.
So do you think that in terms of carrying out his duties as Solicitor General, there might be basis to change his stance on allowing the ICC investigators to come in?
He has said so already. I think it was yesterday or the day before.
Yes, but
He
in terms
already
of
declared.
having basis to allow that, do you think that's any of the reason, not more of a political issue that he changed his position?
It's political because as member of the List Council of the ICC, it's very clear, specifically invoking the Burundi decision of the ICC, that any preliminary investigation must be commenced by the prosecutor within 1 year period from the date of filing of the instrument of withdrawal from the ICC. But the prosecutor in the case of the Philippines went to court to initiate the preliminary investigation on the 2nd year after we had deposited already our withdrawal. And Burundi was very clear. Because the investigation was commenced within 1 year, it could continue. And of course, the corollary should be applied. After 1 year, it should be dismissed because the court is already bereft of jurisdiction. And in fact, in the appellate court jurisdiction, it was a split decision of 3-2. But the majority of 3 said, this is not a decision on jurisdiction. The problem is, again, the same Solicitor General did not argue the issue of lack of jurisdiction. I saw the pleadings. And they had one paragraph devoted to sovereignty is enshrined in the UN Charter. They did not even discuss the implication of when we deposited, when the 1 year period became effective, and when the prosecutor actually asked for authority to commence. And that's why both the pretrial chamber and appellate chamber of the ICC said, you did not argue it in the pretrial chamber. You cannot bring it up on the first time on appeal. But it can be brought up at the proper time, which is when there is confirmation of charges.
So in this case, we would say that in terms of the ICC, they cannot unilaterally dismiss the case, the complaint, even if it's beyond the time period when they should have filed or allowed the investigation in the Philippines. But you're saying that the Solicitor General is
Did not argue it in the first place.
And you don't think it's a lapse of judgment. You think it's a more politically driven.
Well, I don't want to conclude. All I'm saying is, fortunately, the ICC published the submission of the Philippine government. And there was no discussion about our withdrawal and the effect of the withdrawal. And if you look at the decision specifically of the appellate court, the majority, they said, you never brought it up in the pretrial division. You're bringing it up for the first time on appeal. That's what's on record.
If you were to look at the current administration of President Bongbong Marcos, we're now on the 3rd year, how would you rate his terms so far?
Dismal.
This one, on a scale of 1 to 10.
3.
Why?
Number 1, he promised 20 pesos per kilo of rice. We now have 20 pesos of rice in an ice candy plastic. Okay? Hunger is at its worst in the Marcos administration. The peso has gone down at record levels. The number 1 problem complained about by our people is runaway inflation, lack of job, and low wages. And the president seems to be absorbed with the rocks and islets of the South China Sea. I'm not saying you should ignore that, but there should be priorities paid. There's rampant complaints about corruption. And of course, look at our infrastructure. He boasted of 5,500 projects being completed, almost 500 billion in 2 years for flood control. Look what happened to us when we did not even have a super typhoon, just habagat.
You mean the recent typhoon Katrina?
And I think
Karina, yeah.
the floodings of Karina is the best fact checker on what the president said in his SONA. Boasting 5,500 completed projects on flood control, that picture which had, a poster of the president of the State of the Nation address and people literally riding in bancas, is a very apt description of the state of the nation. As someone who campaigned with him, as someone who went up the stage and encouraged people and asked the people to vote for Marcos Duterte, I give my sincerest apologies. I made a mistake. Nabudol po tayo. And that's why I think there is a smear job on me, because they hate it when I say, nabudol ako at nabudol din kayo.
Former President Duterte and his allies have been conducting maisog rallies. But there are also some who have observed that there are no actual prayer rallies, or these are called prayer rallies, but there are no actual prayers being conducted. So how would you characterize these prayer rallies?
Well, there were prayer rallies in Davao, in Cebu, but we have since repackaged them into TAPs: transparency, accountability, peace, and security. So we dropped the prayer rally, okay, after Cebu. So we've conducted in Angeles, we've conducted in Cagayan de Oro, we have trainings also ongoing in different areas where we will also have maisog rallies. So we have dropped the prayer rallies and we have focused on defending the flag, TAPs: transparency, accountability, peace, and security.
There was a recent maisog rally in Canada where a video of the president, supposedly the president taking cocaine, was shown. What is your take on that? Is this, one, do you think it's authentic? And second, do you think is this the proper forum to show something like that?
It was shown by Maharlika, who was really a Marcos loyalist from the very beginning, probably the staunchest of all the Marcos loyalists. So to me, Maharlika is the president and the first lady's problem. She was really not a Duterte supporter, huh? Even when I was presidential spokesperson and she was interviewing me, I knew that the agenda was to advance the Marcos agenda, no? And I played along with her, knowing that she was really promoting Marcos rather than trying to support Duterte, no? She showed that film. And the thing with Maharlika is because she is probably the staunchest loyalist in the past, she knows everyone around the president. And whatever information she gets from what she calls puting ahas, and the source of the video is also puting ahas, means it must have come from someone still close to the president, but terribly disenchanted with how the government is performing now. So to me, my goodness, look at yourselves, Marcos administration, because Maharlika can only have her fellow loyalists as her source. Do I think it's authentic? In New York, we used a computer program called Deepware. In fact, we can do it now if you want. No? It is an app that can detect artificial intelligence, deepfakes. So in front of the audience, we open the program, we put the video, lo and behold, the result was no deepfake detected. So I leave it at that. Of course, the NBI and the DICT made a comparison of pictures, particularly on the ears. So I leave the people to conclude, which will you believe better? A neutral computer app, which says there was no deepfake, or an analysis of government people saying it's false?
Okay.
Make your own conclusions.
I was about to mention the NBI statement as well,
Yes.
saying that it's a fake. But
Yes.
you've already shared what you think, like your opinion on the authenticity of this video. Well, if you are given an opportunity to speak to President Bongbong Marcos right now, what would you say to him? But before you answer that question, we'll have to go on a short break for now. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. And before we took a break, we asked Attorney Harry, if you were given an opportunity to speak to President Bongbong Marcos right now, what would you say to him?
Well, PBBM, I miss you. I miss your small talk. I miss your jokes. And I really think you're a nice person. But my goodness, 31 million people put their trust on you to make their lives better, as we promised during our rallies in Unity. But look at the mess we're in right now. Why did you allow this mess to happen? I thought you were out to redeem the name of the Marcoses after you were given a second chance to rule. Look what happened. We're not getting any investments from the number one source of investments in the region, China, because you decided to pick up a fight with them. You know, the problem with China did not start during your term. It's been there from the time of your father, because your father orchestrated and the claim to the disputed islands. And yet, for the first time, we're not getting any investments from China when all our neighbors are benefiting from the newfound wealth of China. Why are you dragging us to war? Why did you allow the same intermediate missile launchers that nearly caused a nuclear war during the Cuban crisis to be deployed here in the Philippines? Do you really want your fellow Ilocanos to be targeted by Russia and China at the same time? And why did you even allow it to be deployed in Ilocos Norte, your own home province, just because it is proximate to Taiwan? Why are you not paying attention to the cries of the people that you need to do something about inflation? Inflation right now is supply-driven because we have failed to provide the necessary support to the agricultural sector. Why don't you put your foot down, put an end to corruption, and allot the resources to the agricultural sources to rein in inflation? Look for alternative sources of fuel. The fact that you're always following the footstep of the US is depriving us of cheaper fuel from Russia in particular. Why are you even recognizing the sanctions imposed by the US on Russia? In other words, my message to PBBM is, what happened to your promises? Apparently, it's not enough that you are a truly nice guy. You need to deliver on your promises.
That's a mouthful, Attorney Harry.
I still like him,
Yeah.
And I do miss him because he's very, you know, he's nice, a nice person to have a conversation with. You're always relaxed. In fact, you know, I'll tell you, in the last month of the campaign, Inday Sara decided to focus on areas where she was weak. And I knew that we had the same base. But I said, can I go with PBBM? Because I feel that of all the candidates, I really had the least relation with him because I was never a Marcos loyalist. So there were times when it was just the two of us. It was just the two of us in Cagayan province, no? It was just the two of us in some areas of Mindanao, no? So, because I really wanted to know him, and that's when I concluded he's genuinely a nice guy, but apparently being nice is not sufficient to govern a country.
Well, now that you've made your position clear that you don't agree with a lot of the policies of the administration, and former President Duterte has also been open at criticizing President Marcos Jr. Would you say that former President Duterte, including you, and the Maiso group are the real opposition of this current administration?
That's so obvious. My goodness, look at what Laila de Lima said about the SONA. Look at what Barry Gutierrez said. And look at what all the other so-called opposition have been saying. I predict that more yellows or pinks will join the cabinet now that the cabinet members are resigning one by one. Remember, we've had 2 resignations in less than 3 weeks. And I hear there's a third one upcoming.
Interesting. Well, that's the reason I asked you if you're the real opposition, because some of the liberals have been saying that they are the opposition. So what's your take on that?
Well, Marojas took on Twitter and said, when someone's bullying you, of course, you have to trust your allies or something to that effect. No? So
And you're talking about
this
the
is
current foreign
Mar
policy.
Rojas.
Yes,
This
but
is Mar Rojas.
he's referring, former Secretary Mar Rojas. That tweet is related to the current foreign policy.
Which means that basically the policies of the Marcos administration are being adopted and welcomed by the liberals, no? The Pinklawans, the Dilawans, who want to still be known as the opposition. But you see, an opposition must provide an alternative view to the administration, because otherwise, you're useless in a democracy if you maintain the same view. And right now, if the opposition is the political group that offers an alternative, then the alternative is being offered by the Dutertes.
But what about wanting what's right for the country in terms of policies? Do you think it's being the opposition sometimes also allows for agreeing with what the government is doing?
Well, on foreign policy, we say there's no need to go to war. We say that all disputes must be resolved diplomatically and peacefully. You see, the problem with this government now is they want to demonize the Duterte administration. I got flack supposedly for announcing that there's a gentleman's agreement on a status quo. But look what's happening now. They even agreed on prior notification and even verification. They will refuse it, but the Chinese side, yes, they agreed. And that's why we were able to have our latest resupply mission. And I have no doubts that's the only reason why the Chinese agreed. In the past, it was just status quo. Just don't bring in anything other than food and humanitarian assistance. So it's even worse now. Of course, we've had to bite the bullet. Otherwise, we would have to ask our soldiers to leave Sierra Madre, no? Which would, of course, result to our relinquishing our possession of Ayungin. No? So, I mean, that's what I mean. You are not confronting a new problem. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And do not demonize Duterte. Give him the benefit of the doubt that he did what is best for the country. And now no one is talking about what the new agreement was entered into by Manalo. No? Of course, you have Tariela and Secretary Anyo saying, oh, there's no such thing. But there's absolute silence from the DFA. And I understand that because diplomatic relations, diplomatic communication constitute an exception to freedom of exception. Why? Because you need to enter into agreements that are in favor or will advance the national interest, even if they're unpopular.
Okay. How would you describe your relationship with the current Speaker of the House, Martin Romualdez? Because we already know you shared that with the President, he's actually a nice guy and that you got along well before when you were getting to know him.
Martin and I were actually good friends in law school.
Oh, okay.
We were
so
good
we're all
friends.
UP Law.
Until now, Speaker, yung naiwan kong payong sa bahay mo, hindi mo pa binabalik sa akin.
Ikaw naman, payong lang yun.
Balik mo sa akin ang payong ko. 34 years after law school, no, it's, I like Martin, but unfortunately, we're on opposite camps, no? I'm sorry that we're now on opposite camps. But during the campaign, it was Speaker Martin introducing Vice President all the time, in all the rallies. So I miss Martin. I miss him more than I miss the President, of course, because I had more of a relationship with him. I'm so sad that we've had to part ways politically. It was avoidable, I think, but I don't blame him. I think VP Sara also has a role to play in it, but that's how it goes.
What about First Lady, Risa Marcos?
I never had much of a relationship with her, pero alam mo, kumadre-kumpare ko sila ha. Kasi my chief of staff when I was presidential spokes was also chief of staff of PBBM when he was senator.
Okay.
And when she got married, we were both ninong-ninang in the wedding in Bali. So take note, I have never said anything bad about the First Lady. Because, you know, she did not become close to me, but she did not say anything bad to me too, but I suspected she did not want to have anything to do with me because I was closer to Sara, and I sensed that even during the campaign, she did not approve of Sara totally. No? So I just let her be. But I still don't say anything about her out of the fact that we're both lawyers, and lawyers are not supposed to be speaking ill of each other.
Okay. Let's go to more about your personal plans. So you were already former presidential spokesperson. You ran for Senate in 2022. What's
I was
next
also a
for...
member of 17th Congress. People forget that.
Yes, yes, that's true. Because, yeah, of course, because everyone really, we were very visible as presidential
Yes,
spokesperson.
people forget that I was a
Yes,
member
you were
of Congress
also
when
a
I was
representative in
pirated
Congress.
by the president. No? I really don't know why Senate is out. I lost because I did not have sufficient money. That's a realization. People do not run unless you can spare $500 million. It's really how much it costs. No matter what the senators claim otherwise, no one was elected without spending $500 million, probably with the exception of Robin Padilla, because he is already in the public mind. No? I'm not sure I will be effective in Congress either, although that would be a walk in the park, quite frankly. I got 11,300,000 votes. I had 220,000 votes, I think, would be a walk in the park. But what will you do there if there's not enough numbers for a real minority? You'll just be a fence sitter there, no? And be useless. I can be noisy, but what can you achieve by just being noisy? No? And that's why I don't know what my plans are. I really don't know what my plans are. I'm back in practice. I'm engaged in business ventures. I like renewable energy. I think it's also a way of serving the nation, and it should be profitable, although I still have to see the profits. It's all hardship and tears. But you see, that's a nice thing about being a lawyer, no? If you leave politics, life continues. You may not have a political title, you'll always have the title attorney, and you'll always have a profession.
Well, that's very, Attorney Harry, 2025 is just around the corner. So if the Maisog group decides to form a Senate slate and asks you to join that slate, would you consider it? Would you say yes?
Well, no, because I will not run just for the sake of running. When I run, I want to be elected.
Well, what do you think makes Harry Roque resilient? Because you've been embroiled in so many controversies, not just now, but even when you were still presidential spokesperson, but all the more now. How would you describe your resilience?
I know who I am, and I'm quite comfortable with who I am. First and foremost, I'm accountable to my God and to my country. So if you don't like what I'm doing, I respect that. I've been an advocate of free speech, so I need to accept criticisms. I'm not bothered by all these criticisms because they're entitled to their opinion. But I have full faith in the free marketplace of ideas and in the intellect of people to discern what is true and what is false.
Very well said. Thank you again, Attorney Harry Roque, for joining us. It has been a very interesting conversation. Actually, I didn't notice the time.
Thank you. I enjoyed it too. And I enjoy actually having a conversation rather than a debate.
Well, it is an interview after all. So Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's been a privilege.
Okay. Well, thank you. And right now, Attorney Harry Roque, we'll say goodbye to you, and we'll have to pause for a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. Former presidential spokesman Attorney Harry Roque gave his no-holds-barred responses on the issues being thrown at him. He seems unperturbed with all the negativity against him and appears to be confident that history will judge him for standing on his political beliefs. One thing seems clear: his loyalty to former President Duterte is remarkable at a time when loyalty is a commodity that is difficult to find in politics today. Whatever political path he takes moving forward, his outspokenness will certainly carry him through. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news, always stay at the forefront. See you tomorrow, same time, for another dose of our news analysis. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Have a productive day ahead.